Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the Roanoke Colony. 117 people vanished and left only one word. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1587, 117 English men, women, and children established the first English settlement in the Americas on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England within weeks to obtain additional supplies. He left behind his daughter, his son-in-law, and his newborn granddaughter Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. 3 years passed before White could return. War with Spain, the Armada crisis, and the demands of the English Navy delayed every attempt he made to get back. When he finally landed on Roanoke Island in August 1590, the settlement was empty. The buildings had been dismantled. The palisade remained. And carved into a wooden post at the entrance to the fortified area was a single word, CROATOAN. On a nearby tree, the letters CROA. No bodies, no signs of violence. No distress cross, the signal White had agreed with the colonists to leave if they had been forced to leave in danger. Just one word, and then silence for over 400 years. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the world of history's most enduring unsolved crimes, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Every unsolved crime is a failure, not just of the investigation, but of memo. Rye itself, the witness who might have placed the suspect at the scene, has died. The physical evidence has degraded or been lost in a storage room. The lead detective retired 30 years ago. The files exist, but the institutional knowledge that made them legible is gone. Cold cases are, in a very literal sense, history events that have receded from the living present into the documentary past, accessible now only through records, artifacts, and the unreliable memories of survivors. And yet cold cases do get solved. The history of forensic science is partly a history of cold case resolution. Cases that sat dormant for decades until a new technology, DNA profiling, digital facial recognition, isotope ratio analysis, genealogical databases, provided the key that previous generations lacked. The Golden State Killer was identified 50 years after his first known crime by genealogical DNA matching. Multiple historic murders have been solved through mitochondrial DNA extracted from hair samples thought to be too old and degraded to yield any useful information. The past is not as sealed as it seems. What cold cases teach us about crime is often as important as solving them. They expose the limitations of investigative practice at their time, the tunnel vision that focused on the wrong suspect, the forensic contamination that destroyed evidence, the jurisdictional rivalry that prevented agencies from sharing information. Examining cold cases is an act of institutional self-examination, an attempt to learn, across decades, from the failures that allowed the perpetrator to walk free. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns, in science, demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Roanoke Colony, 117 people vanished and left only one word, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Roanoke Colony was established in July 1587 on Roanoke Island, in present-day Dare County, North Carolina, under the governorship of John White. The colonists numbered approximately 115 to 117, including women and children, a deliberate departure from the all-male composition of earlier English colonial expeditions, intended to signal the permanence of the settlement. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered John White departed for England in late August 1587, intending to return within months with supplies. The outbreak of war with Spain and Queen Elizabeth's embargo on shipping during the Armada crisis of 1588 prevented any resupply voyage. White made two failed attempts to return in 1588 before finally securing passage on a privateering expedition that reached Roanoke Island on August 18, 1590, his granddaughter Virginia Dare's third birthday. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. White found the settlement completely abandoned. The colonists' possessions were buried or scattered. The cottage structures had been dismantled and removed. The iron bars and cannon were found buried in the ground. The palisade fence was intact and reinforced compared to when White had left. Carved on the main post was CROATOAN, carved on a nearby tree were the letters CROA. No Maltese cross, the agreed emergency signal, was present anywhere at the site. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, CROATOAN was the name of both a nearby island to the south, now called Hatteras Island, and the indigenous people who inhabited it. White had established friendly relations with the CROATOAN through their leader Manteo, who had twice traveled to England. The carving of the tribe's name without a distress cross was interpreted by White as indicating the colonists had moved to live with the CROATOAN voluntarily rather than under duress. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of White was unable to sail to Hatteras Island to investigate. A storm damaged his ships, and the privateering expedition's captain refused to risk further delays. White was forced to return to England without confirming what had become of the colonists. He never returned to the Americas. He died in Ireland around 1593, never learning the fate of his daughter, son-in-law, or granddaughter Virginia Dare. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Archaeological work at Cape Creek on Hatteras Island, beginning in 2007, produced English artifacts from the late 6th century, including a signet ring whose heraldic design has been linked to the White family. In 2012, reanalysis of a John White watercolor map held by the British Museum revealed a hidden symbol beneath a paper patch, a symbol suggesting a fort constructed inland from the coast, leading the first colony foundation to begin excavations in Bertie County, North Carolina. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Roanoke Colony. 117 people vanished and left only one word. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academy exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the colonists integrated with the CROATOAN people on Hatteras Island, living among the indigenous community and eventually assimilating through intermarriage. The theory most consistent with the carved message, and the absence of any distress signal. English artifacts found at Cape Creek on Hatteras Island support movement of English people or goods to that location. The Lumbee people of North Carolina maintain an oral tradition of partial English descent, though their connection to Roanoke specifically remains genetically and historically unconfirmed. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the colonists were attacked and killed by the Powhatan Confederacy, whose territory lay to the north. John Smith recorded an account in 1607 suggesting Powhatan chief Wahensanaca had ordered the execution of survivors of a Roanoke group who had settled at Chesapeake Bay. This account, if accurate, suggests at least some colonists moved north and were subsequently killed, but the identity of the executed group cannot be confirmed and may refer to a different population. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the colonists split into smaller groups following different survival strategies, some moving to Hatteras Island with the CROATOAN, others attempting to reach the Chesapeake Bay settlement, and others moving inland, with different subgroups meeting different fates over the 3 years. White was absent. This composite explanation accounts for the diverse strands of physical and oral historical evidence without requiring a single unified outcome for the entire colony. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Roanoke Colony 117 people vanished and left only one word does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the 2007 Cape Creek excavations on Hatteras Island, conducted by the First Colony Foundation, produced English artifacts dated to the late 16th century, including a signet ring with heraldic decoration, in a context associated with indigenous CROATOAN habitation. The presence of English material culture at the CROATOAN's primary settlement is the strongest direct physical evidence that English people reached or were in contact with that community after the colony's abandonment. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the 2012 discovery of a hidden symbol on John White's La Virginia Pars map, revealed under multispectral imaging, shows what appears to be a fort symbol beneath a paper patch that White himself applied, suggesting White knew of an inland secondary settlement that he chose to conceal from casual inspection. First Colony Foundation excavations at the Mary Hill site in Bertie County subsequently found possible evidence of a small European presence at the indicated location. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed William Strachey's 1612 account in the history of travail into Virginia Britannia records Powhatan's statement that he had killed English people who had been living at Chesapeake Bay for 20 years, a time frame that would coincide with Roanoke survivors. This is significant documentary evidence, but cannot confirm whether the people killed were Roanoke colonists, a separate group, or a misremembered or embellished account. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Roanoke Colony. 117 people vanished and left only one word. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The First Colony Foundation continues active excavations at multiple sites, including Cape Creek on Hatteras Island and the Bertie County inland location, identified through the map analysis. The CROATOAN integration theory has the strongest combined evidence base: the carved name, the English artifacts on Hatteras Island, and indigenous oral traditions, but no single piece of evidence is conclusive. A DNA project has been initiated to test Lumbee people's claims of descent from Roanoke colonists, but results have not been definitive. The story of the lost colony remains North America's oldest cold case, 436 years old and still open. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, has never been found. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis. And the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Roanoke Colony. 117 people vanished and left only one word. From the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Roanoke Colony ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.